But when you observe yourself within, you see moving images, a world of images, generally known as fantasies. Yet these fantasies are facts. And it is such a tangible fact, for instance, that when a man has a certain fantasy, another man may lose his life. It is of course not a tangible object, but it is a fact nevertheless. It is a manifestation of something. And so, you see, the man who is going by the external world, by the influences of the external world, say society or perceptions, sense perceptions, thinks that he is more valid, you know, because this is valid, this is real. And the man who goes by the subjective factor is not valid because subjective factor is nothing. No, that man is just as well based, because he is bases himself upon the world from within. Of course, that is the introvert. And as the introvert is always afraid of the external world, he will tell you, when you ask him, he will be apologetic about it. He say, of course, yes, I know only my fantasies. And he has always a resentment. And as the world in general, particularly America, is extroverted like hell, the introvert has no place. Because he doesn't know that he beholds the world from within. And that gives him dignity, and that gives him certainty.
Autism and introversion share many overlapping traits, such as spending a lot of time alone, being less social, and having unique, focused interests. In today's video, we'll explore these concepts in detail and help you determine whether you might be autistic, an introvert, or perhaps a bit of both. The first thing to establish is that according to the theory, autism is a spectrum, meaning it's not only autistic and not autistic, but there is an entire range of intensity. An individual can have a mild, intermediate, or severe case of autism. So if you find that some characteristics of autistic individuals resonate with you, while others don't seem to fit, it might mean you're on the autism spectrum to a mild degree. But finding out about your traits is still necessary so that you can understand yourself on a deeper level. Similarly, you could be on a spectrum of introversion and extroversion. In reality, you might be a mix of both.
There is no such thing as a pure extrovert or a pure introvert. Such a man would be in the lunatic asylum. Those are only terms to designate a certain tendency. For instance, the tendency to be more influenced by environmental influences or more influenced by the subjective factor. That's all.
It is estimated that around half of the population identifies themselves as introverts, whereas less than 5% of people in the world are actually autistic. So it is important to know if you're actually autistic or just an introvert. The main difference between introversion and autism is the difference between preference and challenge. According to Carl Jung, introversion is a natural preference, a way some people are wired. Introverts prefer calm, quiet environments and meaningful conversations. It's not that they can't handle stimulation or socializing, it's that they choose to limit it because it drains their energy. Think of an introvert at a company party. They might engage in some small talk, chat with a few close colleagues, and then feel the need to leave early or step outside for a breather. It's not that they dislike people, it's just that their energy is better spent in smaller, quieter settings. For an introvert, this is all about preference. They thrive in situations that align with their inner nature. Similarly, an introvert will spend time by himself and indulge in activities like reading and painting. But they do this as a choice because they would much rather spend time with their interests instead of meeting new people. Therefore, they do not have any problem socializing with people. In fact, they might be really good at navigating social spaces. It's a matter of choice and what feels best to them. However, autism, on the other hand, often involves challenges rather than preferences. These challenges stem from how autistic individuals process the world around them, particularly in areas like sensory input, communication, and social interactions. Unlike introverts who simply prefer quieter settings, autistic people may find certain environments or situations overwhelming to the point of discomfort or even distress. Imagine someone with autism in that same company party. The loud music, overlapping conversations, and bright lights might make it nearly impossible for them to focus or feel at ease. They're not just tired like the introvert, they're genuinely struggling to process the sensory input. For them, leaving the party isn't about preference, it's about protecting their well-being. For autistic individuals, these challenges are often neurological. They might include difficulty interpreting social cues, discomfort with certain sensory inputs, or struggles with unstructured social situations. It's not about energy management, it's about navigating a world that doesn't always align with how their brain processes information. While introversion and autism are distinct, they do share some overlapping traits and tendencies. It's important to understand how these traits compare and how they might be different. One of the most notable similarities is an aversion to highly stimulating environments. Loud parties, bustling crowds, or chaotic workplaces can feel overwhelming to both introverts and autistic people. However, the reasons might differ slightly. For introverts, overstimulation can be draining to their energy, while for autistic individuals, it might be due to sensory sensitivities. Both these individuals prefer solitude and feel comfortable and recharged when they're alone or in low-stimulation environments. Secondly, introverts and autistic people often value deeper, more meaningful connections rather than casual, surface-level interactions. They may find small talk tiring or unfulfilling, as it doesn't provide the depth they enjoy in conversations. Instead, they tend to seek out relationships where they can share honest thoughts, be themselves, and discuss topics that genuinely interest them. For both, connecting on a deeper level feels more rewarding and satisfying than engaging in shallow, everyday chit-chat. The difference again being that the introvert can engage in small talk at their workplace if they have to, whereas the autistic individual just can't understand these types of conversations. Speaking of interests, both introverts and autistic individuals are often drawn to activities that allow them to immerse themselves fully in something they love. For introverts, this might look like diving into a creative project, while for autistic people, it could involve a deep focus on a special interest or hobby. The interest might seem odd to people, and they might think the amount of time spent doing that activity is unreasonable. But to the autistic and introverted people, it feels like the most natural and comforting thing. While this is more prominent in autism, introverts can also share a preference for routine and predictability. Both groups often feel more at ease when they know what to expect in their day or social interactions. Situations and gatherings which are not structured can cause them to become anxious and overwhelmed. And finally, both introverted and autistic individuals are sometimes misunderstood by those around them. Introverts might be seen as shy or antisocial, while autistic people might be labeled as aloof or unapproachable. In reality, both groups simply experience and engage with the world in ways that others might not immediately understand. Their unique perspective can make them seem distant and unrelatable, causing introverted and autistic individuals to feel misunderstood and isolated. So how can you tell if you're introverted, autistic, or possibly both? Here are a few questions to ask yourself. The first question is, do you avoid crowds due to sensory overload? If loud noises, bright lights, or chaotic environments feel unbearable, sensory differences associated with autism could be a factor. It is the neurological difference in autistic individuals that causes overstimulation in certain environments, like parties and malls. The second question to ask yourself is, do you feel drained after socializing but can navigate social situations easily? If this sounds like you, you're likely introverted. Introverts can still pick up on social cues and navigate social situations effectively. They just prefer not to do it all the time. But if you find it hard to interpret facial expressions, tone of voice, or unspoken social rules, it could be related to how your brain processes interactions. This could indicate autism, as autistic individuals want to have deep connections with people, but can't figure out how to do that. The third question is, do you find it difficult to regulate your emotions? Most autistic people have some degree of challenge in containing their emotions. So ask yourself, do you generally feel fine in most environments? Or do you have specific problems, like being very specific about the food you eat? Or maybe having trouble sitting in certain chairs? These unique challenges are a strong indication of autism. Another common trait of autism is stimming. Stimming is the act of performing repetitive movements in order to increase focus and concentration. While doing such repetitive movements is completely normal, it is a prominent characteristic of autistic individuals. The intensity of stimming can vary and can be very noticeable in some people. It can include specific practices or objects that seem odd to the people around. And finally, do you feel like an outsider in your group? For many people with autism, the feeling of being different can be deeply ingrained. Some even describe it as feeling like a different species, like everyone else speaks a language they've never been taught. They feel like an alien amongst people and find it difficult to blend in. This sense of being out of sync can make social interactions challenging and lead to feelings of isolation, even in familiar environments. At the end of the day, introversion and autism are two distinct concepts, but they're both valid ways of being. If you think you might be autistic, consider reaching out to a specialist for an evaluation. And if you resonate with Jung's ideas about introversion, embrace it as part of your unique personality. Understanding these differences isn't about putting yourself into a box. It's about learning how to honor your natural tendencies and thrive in a way that feels authentic to you. As always, thank you for watching this video, and I will see you in the next one.